Hi everyone, I'm Mrs. Johnson. I teach the environmental science class here at Kayamishi Tech, and this video is to show you how to set up your spiral notebook that you're going to need for the class, and it will also show you the different pieces of lab equipment that you need in order to make your sketches for the class. Alright, first things first, for our class you're going to need a one subject spiral notebook. On the cover of your notebook, using permanent marker, go ahead and write your first name, last initial, and then write ES, and that stands for environmental science. If you would, please also write AM or PM for whichever time period that you're going to be here at Kayamishi Tech. All right. Inside our notebook, we're going to put, first of all, our safety information. So, you either have a sheet like this that was in your packet, or I emailed it to you. So safety symbols go first. So when you open the cover, on the very first page, we're going to tape in this safety symbol sheet. But we don't want to tape it in like this because you're going to have a whole lot of stuff that's sticking out of your notebook and it's going to get torn up. So in order to have it secure in our notebook to use when we need it, but not have it hanging out of the notebook, we're going to tape it in by turning it sideways, and then put one piece of tape on the top, and then fold the sheet in, but don't cover up the title of it. Fold it right below so that you know that this is your safety symbol sheet. And then we're going to put another piece of tape right here on the fold. That way our sheet is secure in there, but it's not hanging out the notebook. All right, so that went on our first page. Then you'll turn the page, and on the left-hand side we'll do the same thing and tape in the GHS pictograms, the pictures. Then on the right-hand side, the next page, we'll tape in the GHS labels. Next is going to be your lab equipment. So, to review, in our notebook, we have our first name, last initial, ES for environmental science, and then AM or PM. On the first page, tape in your safety symbol sheet. On the next page, GHS pictograms. On the next page, GHS label training guide. Then you're going to turn another sheet, and on the right-hand side, we're going to fold it over from right to left, just like this. You can fold it all the way over to the margin line if you want, but I write kind of big, so I need a little more room. It's entirely up to you. And I'm going to take a pencil, and I'm going to take a ruler, because my OCD requires it to be a straight line, but it doesn't have to be a straight line. And I'm going to draw a line right where the edge of that piece of paper is at. So right where the edge of that sheet's at, that's where I drew my line. Then I'm going to divide this into 6 sections. For a wide ruled notebook, each section is about 4.5 lines wide. So then I've got space for 2 more down here, and once again I'm going to use a ruler because I like my lines straight. But it really doesn't matter so long as you've got your sections on there. If you use a college ruled notebook, you can do the same thing. These are about 5.5 lines wide. The wide ruled notebook was 4.5. College rule 5.5, wide rule 4.5. Then, now that I've made all of my sections, I'm going to take my lab equipment notes, and in each section I'm going to put a piece of lab equipment, the name and the information. The name and a little sketch goes on the left-hand side of my line. The information about that piece of lab equipment goes on the right-hand side. So, as I fill it in, it's going to kind of look like this. So I've got the name of my piece of lab equipment, I've got a little sketch, then I've got information about that piece of lab equipment. The beaker holds liquids, you can mix chemicals in it, It gives estimates of volume. The sketches don't have to be Picasso drawings. I'm a stick person myself, love stick people. So this next picture would be my microscope, and I just want something that I can associate with that piece of lab equipment. It's okay that it doesn't look exactly like it, because almost every piece of lab equipment has different varieties, so you've got to be flexible for that anyway. All right, so that's how you set up your notebook. Now let me show you the pieces of lab equipment so that you can make your sketches. All right, so our first piece of lab equipment was the beaker. Our beakers are made of glass. They got this little notch on the top of them that helps in order to pour, so it doesn't spill and it doesn't dribble down the side of the beaker. They have graduated measurement markings on here, but they're for estimates only. They're not going to give you an accurate measurement of volume. Next, chances are you've already used a microscope, but our microscopes are compound binocular microscopes. They're called binocular microscopes because they have two eyepieces. Most of the microscopes that we use in the past in lower grades, they only have the one ocular or one eyepiece. And they're for looking at very small items. Next, we have the conical graduated vial. This guy right here is the conical graduated vial. It's the graduated vial because it has those little measurement lines on there. Graduated means that it's got markings on there for volume, but it's an estimate also. I brought this vial out to show the difference between these two guys because you might be using either one, but you have to pay attention because the lid on this one comes off real easily, while as the lid on this one, actually you have to unscrew it in order to get it off. So if you're using this vial and you shake or turn it upside down, your contents are going to leak all over the place and you're going to have a spill hazard. If you use this one, it's got a nice tight seal, so it can be upside down or it can be laying down on a table and not spill. Digital scale. This is going to give us an accurate mass measurement. Disposable pipette. Disposable because it's plastic, so we can throw it away. It also has the graduated markings, so we can get an estimate of volume. The dropper, on the other hand, does not have the graduated markings on it, so this is just to add a drop or two or whatever. Next, this is our Erlenmeyer flask. Like the beaker, the Erlenmeyer flask has the graduated lines on it. Like the beaker, it's made of glass, and it's also for estimates only. Notice that it doesn't have the same lip on it that the beaker does. So if you try to pour from an Erlenmeyer flask, it's going to spill and it's going to run down the side because it doesn't have that little lip that makes it really good for pouring. Forceps. We don't call them tweezers in class because you use tweezers to pluck your eyebrows. Forceps we're not going to put anywhere near our face, so since we're becoming a little bit more sophisticated, we're going to call them by their actual term. Glass stirring rod. Glass stirring rod is used just for what you would think it would be used for, to mix chemicals. It is made of glass, so you have to be careful because if you hit it too hard against the surface or hit it against the container, then you can break it. The reason why it's made of glass, even though it's breakable, is so that it won't react with all of the chemicals that you have, that you're trying to get the chemicals to react with themselves, not with whatever piece of lab equipment you're stirring them with. Graduated cylinder. Once again, it's called graduated. It's got the measurement lines on it. A graduated cylinder is going to give us an accurate volume, but in order to get an accurate volume, you have to have it sitting on a flat surface, and you have to get down and look at the level at eye level. Our hot plate magnetic stir. This guy has a great little feature on it when it's plugged in, that it will stir your materials for you if you have your magnetic stir bar in your container. That way you don't have to worry about the glass stir rod, and you don't have to sit there and stir it because it'll do it for you. So, hot plate, magnetic stirrer. Here's our magnetic stir bar. Microscope slide and cover slip. Most of you guys have already had the chance to use a microscope slide before, so you know that these things are already delicate. They're made of glass and you have to be careful with them. For the cover slip, our cover slips are glass too. In the past, you've probably used a cover slip that was plastic, but now our cover slips are glass. Look how thin that sucker is. So this, since it's made of glass, it can fall and break too, and the pieces of glass that would break would be very sharp, so you're only going to use a broom and dustpan in order to pick up that broken glass because the pieces can be so small. Next, we have micro tube. Micro just means that it's smaller. Our little micro tubes, we can aliquot small amounts of liquid or chemicals in here. And we have a micro tube rack, which is perfect for our micro tubes. It's a nice small size to hold them. Petri dish, we will probably use Petri dish for some of our labs. Understand that the Petri dish has a lid that's very loose. It is not secure on there, so it can fall off really easily, so make sure that you handle it carefully. Pinch clamp. Kind of is what it says. You push down and it's going to pinch to shut if you want to use rubber tubing and you want to not quite so permanent closure on that. Our pinch clamp is what we're going to use. Rubber stopper, used to store liquids. Some of our stoppers have a hole in it, and that would be to add equipment, another piece of lab equipment, say a thermometer or a probe, to watch the reaction as it's taking place. Screw clamp is a little bit better than the pinch clamp if you want it to be a more permanent type of closure, say in a rubber tubing. And so you just screw it and hold it down and it'll clamp it. Next, test tube. Probably used test tubes before. Test tube brush cleans out the inside of the test tube. Test tube clamp. This is a test tube clamp. The test tube clamp clamps onto the test tube, and it can also clamp onto something like our ring stand. The test tube clamp is going to hold our test tube for us, and we don't have to hold it. It clamps on. The test tube holder, on the other hand, will hold our test tubes as we hold the test tube holder. So this is the test tube holder. I have to hold the test tube holder while the test tube holder holds my test tube. But I have to continue to hold this. For the test tube clamp, you don't have to continue to hold it. That's for the test tube holder, you have to continue to hold the test tube holder as it holds the test tube. A test tube rack, sure, a test tube rack holds my test tube, but I don't have to hold the rack in order for it to hold my test tube. Thermometer. Notice the difference between the thermometer and the glass stirring rod. The glass stirring rod does not have the graduated markings on it. The thermometer does. That's the only thing that people get confused, is they think the stirring rod is the thermometer. Our vortex mixer, we can use that to mix chemicals within a test tube. Whoops, it would help if I showed you. Vortex mixer, we can use it to mix chemicals within a test tube. Our wash bottle, we will be using wash bottles. You have to handle it carefully because when you squeeze the sides of the wash bottle, it's going to shoot out a stream of water so that you can rinse out the inside of a container. and a weight dish. This is our weight dish. You put whatever item inside here that you want to find the mass of, and that way it won't contaminate the digital scale when you set it on the digital scale. Alright, our eye wash system is over here by the sink. And for those of you, I mean, it took me a while to figure out, but you know, I'm a little bit slow. In order to use the sink, you actually have to push the handle out, and then up or down for hot or cold, and then back in whenever you're finished. So that's the sink. This is our eye wash over here. To activate the eye wash system, you just have to grab a hold of the bar, and you pull it towards yourself. And then you stick your face down in there and get your eyes in that spray. For the eye wash system, you need to rinse your eyes out for 20 minutes in order to get chemicals or particles or whatever is in there out of there. You might have to actually force your eyes open in order to get the washing motion of that water in there. Alright, our fire extinguisher is located by the classroom door. To use the fire extinguisher, there's 4 steps, and they're abbreviated PASS. P means to pull the pin. So you would pull this pin out of the top. A is aim. So you would grab a hold of the nozzle on the hose and aim it at the base of your fire. S means squeeze. You would squeeze the handle. And the last S is sweep. So you would sweep side to side at the base of the flames. You obviously are not required to fight fires when you're here at KTC. The one thing that you should do if there's a fire would be to evacuate immediately. However, if it's a small fire, it might be possible in order to fight the fire with an extinguisher. But you need to keep in mind that you should first make sure that you have your back to an exit so that you can exit quickly if that fire gets worse without while you're fighting it. And finally, these are our nitrile gloves. These are kind of what you think of as far as a doctor wears. And so these guys are the thin, I mean, it's kind of like plastic material that you normally associate, like I said, with doctors or hospitals. This is a thermal glove. Notice how much thicker the thermal glove is, and this is used in order to help you heat safely or to transfer pieces of lab equipment that have been heated. Alright, so the spiral notebook that we're getting set up today, this is going to be something that you need to use every day in the environmental science classroom, so it'll be very important to bring that with you in order to be prepared. And of course, always have something to write with. Because of the COVID-19 issue, I would highly recommend that you have a set of supplies that would stay here in the classroom. Highlighters, if you can get 6 different color highlighters, something to write with, a dispenser with tape in it, and a glue stick would be great. I have some things that I can get for you, but I know a lot of people like to personalize it, and mine is just in a Ziploc bag. So if you're fine with that, I'm fine with that. But if you want to get yourself a little pencil bag and get your own items, then I'm okay with that too. That's it for today. See you soon.